My name is Joanne. I am happy to be here. I am in recovery for codependence and as an Al-Anon. And for me, that's how I got into the rooms. Well, even before that, I did do Life Lab, but I got into the rooms for codependency, and then for as an Al-Anon. But soon I discovered, um, being here long enough, that I had my actual problem was that I had an adrenaline addiction. And so, um, and it starts to make sense like why I would have an adrenaline addiction, because here I am in Al-Anon. I find myself in relationships with lots of addicts, like all you guys right now. Just kidding. That was a joke. But like I feel like, you know, it makes sense now. It wasn't just me, or it wasn't just the addict around me that was the problem. It was me. There was a problem inside of me. There was something that I got out of the relationship. As much as I wanted to say like I'm there to control or fix or, help make that person better, it's not necessarily true. With Life Lab, when I first started out in recovery, I was really grateful to have it because Life Lab um, established a really solid 10 and 11 step without me even knowing it. And the reason for that is we got to do inventories in there, but also it greatly just aided me in finding a connection to God. It encouraged me, to read the Bible daily, to rewire my brain by listening to worship music or meditation music. It also just caused me to like slow down more. And so I felt like when I was eventually led into a 12-step program, um, yeah, it really set me up. So, I guess that's a little bit about me and how I came to be here. So I was grateful to find this program that many of you are a part of, or maybe want to be part of. It's called the Big Book Awakening, BBA. And when I was first going through the 12 steps with my sponsor, one of the concepts that really resonated with me was this concept about uncommon sense. And it's in the Big Book, page 13. And I'll read it really quickly here. I think that's probably helpful. So it's just a little paragraph 4, paragraph on page 13, and it's in relation to step 10. And it says, I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. And then into step 11, it says, I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore on my usefulness to others, that I might expect that then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. So I found that when I first came into recovery, I couldn't trust my brain. I had a hard time trusting what I thought, or like trust like my perception of things, because I learned that I was really out of whack and that I had a lot of chatter and I had a lot of just brain noise and fog in my head. And that was so my sponsor would tell me, well, when I was making this decision or trying to think about this, or, in relation to this person, she's like, try uncommon sense. Okay, do the opposite perhaps. And maybe that's not always helpful, but I needed to do something different because I was I was having trouble. I got to the point where, retreats weren't working for me. I grew up in the church, and the church wasn't really working for me because I still had all these blocks from God. It was actually my problem. It wasn't the church that wasn't working for me. It was my problems. But I got to a point where I really needed something. And there's this saying that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so I needed change. I have this joke, or an inside joke with my husband. I don't even, we were talking about this morning. I don't even know what it was about, but I said something and he's like, "Oh, I've never heard of that before." And I was like, "Oh, it's just common sense." And he was super insulted because he's like, "No, it's not. I've never heard of that before, so it can't be common sense." And so now we like joke about stuff. If there's like something he doesn't know, I'll just be like, "Oh, everybody knows that. That's common sense." And so it's funny for me when I was thinking about like uncommon sense, I was like, "Well, maybe he has uncommon sense." But yeah, where am I here? Yeah, so I think with going back to I needed a change, and if nothing changes, nothing changes. So with Life Lab, when I first was introduced to it, one thing that really stuck with me is that we have the opportunity to have our minds rewired, which is a really interesting concept of, yeah, being able to think differently. How do I think the way that I think? Well, I'm sure that it's just the way that I was born and the environment that I was in and the things that I was surrounded by and what I choose to believe to be true and what I didn't. And maybe it was shaped by this or this or this, all these different circumstances, places, and things. And I just knew that I needed my mind to be rewired. And so when I was in Life Lab, I love that. Like it was just like starting to do something different. The good book, which we were talking about as well, which is the Bible, in Romans 12, 1-2, it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." So right now, we are in a season called Lent in the church calendar. Some people follow it, some people don't. But this year I felt particularly inspired and I dug a little bit into what Lent is. And Lent is a very uncommon sense thing to do because it calls us to deny ourselves of things. It causes us to choose to be uncomfortable. It asks us to suffer. It refers to the 40 days that are before Easter. Um, and they kind of are this like mirror reflection of when Jesus he went into the desert to be tempted for 40 days, and he fasted and prayed for 40 days. And he went into this wilderness, and it was uncomfortable. And and it was interesting. I was thinking about that of like so often I think we think of like prayer and fasting, they're very nice things, but they're actually really uncomfortable because when we take away the comforts that we have, our familiarity, all of a sudden we're tempted. All of a sudden we feel like we're so uncomfortable. And so all of these outside things are removed. Therefore, we try to fill them with other things, or we're tempted with other things. And really, the whole purpose is to strip away all of the things so that way we can become in line with God. We can be connected to God and remove the things that often distract us from him, that keep us disconnected from him. I was thinking about like uncommon sense of the kingdom of God. So again, in the good book, Jesus particularly talks a lot in the Gospels through his teachings and parables about the kingdom of God, that there's two kingdoms. There's God's kingdom, and then there's the kingdom of this world. And so it always seems to me when Jesus talks like that, he's like, it feels like such a backwards way of living. It's very countercultural. It's very uncommon sense. It goes against the grain of me, against my pride, against my sin, against what I want or what I naturally think I want. It goes against the need for me to play God. It goes against my need to run my life and to be in control and to fix things on my own. I was just like looking at a few different like specific verses, and I just checked out the book of Matthew. So I'll read a few of them just to give you a taste of the uncommon sense that God talks about in his kingdom. So Matthew 5:38-40 says, "You have heard it said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well." Matthew 5:44 says, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." Like that's wild. Like that's revolutionary. The crazy things that are going on in our world constantly have since the beginning of history that we see in the news even today. It's like love your enemies, pray for those that persecute. Like that's not normal. That goes against everything that feels, I think, just. It's like no, hate your enemies. Like kill the wicked. Like get rid of them. But that's playing God. And it's not to say that we don't hate evil or hate wickedness or hate injustice. No, we totally do. But this concept of loving our enemies and praying for them is crazy. Matthew 16:24-26. Then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? And I was just, as I was reflecting on that, of again, this backwards way of like, so we go through life. Our world tells us that we need to save our own lives. Like it's dog eat dog out there. Like if I'm not going to survive, like someone's going to trample all over me. So I got to try to make things happen. I am responsible for my own success. But and I think that too, like our world is about getting ahead. Our world is about stepping on anyone that gets in our way of our success. It's a big rat race of who can get the best stuff, who can have the best life. It's full of comparison. Look at social media, how it's built. It's filled with all of the things that I need to make me happy. And also it's showing me constantly that I'm not enough. But maybe that's just me. And it's just bigger is better. There's not enough, and we need to constantly just consume and consume to feel satisfied. And at the end of the day, we deserve all this stuff. We've been so good. We've done so well. And so what I saw at the end is that it boils down to, I'm just trying to play God. I'm trying to control all the outcomes. I'm trying to fix myself first and then fix other people too, so that I can create this perfect world for myself. But I love when I have a good friend that will say so often after all my complaints, she'll say, and how's that working out for you? And so that's what I would respond to that of like, okay, we have this world that has all of these values, but how's that working out for us? When I look around, it's not going so well. When people are running life on their own, and the way that they see fit and they play God, and I'm including myself in that, it doesn't go so well. So I think of like, I had thought of the picture of like uncommon sense of like, I like to work out. As you can see behind me, my husband makes his own, we call them like prison weights. I don't know if that's true, but they're like made of concrete because we don't have as much money maybe. And so we have to make our own. And they're really scary if you drop them. But I thought of this picture of like working out, and I started lifting weights about a year ago or so. And it's such a backwards thing to think that in weightlifting, technically, the more I lift, the stronger I become. But in order for me to become strong, is I actually have to tear my muscles. So muscles get torn as they're under pressure and lifting weight. I'm so sorry if this is not, I think this is true. John, you know better than me. You look like a weightlifter. He seems to be saying true. So you have to tear your muscles in order for them to grow stronger and stronger, which is backwards. You would think that like, I don't know, you just like, as soon as you lift something, it's just like muscles will get bigger and bigger and bigger, but that's not true. And then also you have to fuel yourself and put protein in and other things. But I think that that's so interesting. And I think too, as Vicky will say to me, I'll throw Vicky out there, but she'll say to me often, again, good friends are important to keep around, by the way, come in the opposite spirit. Which is really hard. Again, it's uncommon sense. It goes against my grain. When someone comes at me angrily, accusing me, or saying I haven't done something good enough, or saying, not appreciating me and slamming me or whatever, my reaction is to like give it back to them. Like the eye for an eye thing, I get that. Like but turn the other cheek and let them slap me, like that's not happening. Give them my cloak along with everything else they're asking for, like that's not Joanne's natural way of doing things. But I started trying this out, like like really trying this out recently on people to see if it's true. And it was amazing. It worked. So, um, you know, I is my husband here right now? He's not. Okay. He'd be fine with me saying this. Like he was criticizing something that I was doing. I was so frustrated with him. I was like, oh, like how dare he? He doesn't appreciate me. So all these things are happening in my head. But then I thought, okay, I should try the opposite spirit thing. So what I did instead of like giving it back to him and telling him all the ways that he doesn't do things properly and in a timely manner, I said nothing. And I just was like, I didn't react to him. Um, kept my mouth shut. And then when he said something else to me that was like out of his rant, I just responded really nicely to him. And it was like after, like within a few hours, he apologized to me even, which was amazing. He was like, I'm sorry, like that was really rude of me. I was like, yeah, it really was. and but it was this opposite spirit thing. But what I realized, it wasn't just this lack of reaction on Joanne's part. What it was I actually got freedom because I wasn't holding on to it. It wasn't even internalizing it. He was saying these things and I responded in a different spirit, and then I just asked God throughout as he was saying stuff to me. I was like, okay, God, like just help me to let this go. Like, and yeah, it gave me freedom. It like the time that I would have spent mulling it over in my head afterward and becoming bitter and becoming resentful, and then thinking of all the things that I could say to him next time, or being like, oh, maybe I can do things better next time and try to be good enough for him so that he'll never say these things to me. All of those things would just equate to me tirelessly expending energy that wasn't necessary in the first place to expend when I could have been doing other things. And so it drained me. That's what I did before. And so I'm trying to remember these things. I had a friend text me um and this friend was just like freaking out about all this stuff and it felt really anxious to me and I was like, "Ugh, like what do I do?" So I let it be for a little while and then I heard again, respond to the opposite spirit. So then I responded to this friend and I said, "Oh man, that sounds really hard. I'm gonna pray for you." And and that felt better as opposed to me trying to give her all this unsolicited advice and try to make her life better and fix it. It was like, no, that's not my job. My job is to respond in an opposite spirit. Um, Another thing that I was actually thinking of that I want to tell a story about of an experience I had this past week was uh, on the weekends, I was so tired. I was so burnt out. So I'm like in the library with my kids and my husband, and they're running around and doing stuff, and I'm on my phone Googling, how do I know if I have mom burnout? Because I thought I was like, I was so tired. I checked all the like pretty much all the things on the list. I was like, what's going on with me? So I'm like finding all these blogs, I'm like reading about them and trying to figure out how to fix myself. All right. So it's like I'm a controller fixer of others and myself. So naturally, I want to fix myself. I came home and I started crying because I'm like, I can't fix myself. This is hopeless. I'm so tired. Like, how am I going to deal with this? And then there was this moment that happened, and I I sensed God say, okay, talk to me about this. Okay, like that's not normal for me to do that as at least it's not as common. It's becoming more common. But so I did. I started crying. I felt so many emotions. And then I had my journal. I like to write, so I wrote some of this down. And then I just sensed God being like, "Tell me about it." And so I started telling him all of the things. And I realized in that moment, like God's the perfect person to complain to. It's my husband doesn't love it when I complain to him. I don't think my friends really do. Not to say that we can't communicate and express ourselves to each other, but I sensed God being like, I can take it. And then the best part I realized was like, oh, like God, the best person to complain to because he fully understands me. Often when I complain to people, I'm trying to prove myself. I'm trying to get them to understand me. I'm trying to get them to feel sorry for me, or I'm trying to get them to like see all of the things or maybe what someone else did wrong, which like probably gets into gossip at that point. But like it just showed me that God is the perfect being to complain to, because he already gets me. He already sees my days. He already sees my thoughts. He sees my heart. He sees all of the circumstances, and he's okay with it. He can take it. And it was this beautiful reminder and like revelation of like, why don't I do that more? And by the way, how am I doing for time? I haven't timed myself. 5 minutes. Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, that this, and it comes back to just that this is uncommon for me. Uncommon sense would be Joanne doing all the other stuff and complaining to lots of people and creating a whirlwind and creating all this stuff that just exhausts me for nothing. And when really God is just, he's right there and wants to take burdens. He wants to take all of the things that drag me down and that bring destruction and chaos to me. Um, and and he sets things right. He um, not that he makes everything perfect and better, but it's like this peace of mind is restored or is brought back, because that's what it is that it's like I'm not then giving into the chaos. He gives me peace of mind instead, and that's what I really wanted when I first started recovery. Was like, can you just stop the noise and the chatter? And it kind of came full circle for me of just being like, God being like, it's okay if all these things come against you. It's okay if there's crazy in the world. It's okay if all that stuff is happening. It's gonna happen. This is an imperfect world, but God is just starting to show me what his kingdom looks like, and that his kingdom is full of peace and joy and love and hope and all of the things that my heart really longs for when I think about um, what isn't right with the world or what isn't right in me. Everything that is right and good is God.